Hi there. It's March, so that means it's Women's History Month. And for this week's First Chapter Friday, we're going to talk about Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein. And you can see this is a Prince Honor book. The Prince Award is the book that's given, the award given to the best young adult book every year. So this is a young adult book. It's a World War II story, it's a spy story, and it's a great women's history story. So even though this is fiction, it is a historical fiction story. What I love about this and a lot of really great historical fiction books out there is that in the back, after you finish the book, there's a section where the author kind of explains what parts of the story are true and what parts of the story were made up. And then in this one, there's a huge bibliography. So just like always, anytime there's a bibliography and you have the sources for something, it adds more credibility to a story. So this is a great story. Not only is it like you can't, it's kind of like unput downable in terms of the writing, it's also just really well researched and a great story. So I'm going to read you the first chapter of Codename Verity. First time I get to read to you from my back patio outside in the spring. I'm so excited it's warm enough to do that. So here we go. Perth, Scotland, 2022. Passive resistors must understand that they are as important as saboteurs. SOE Secret Operations Manual, Methods of Passive Resistance. Part 1, Verity. I am a coward. I wanted to be heroic and pretended I was. I've always been good at pretending. I spent the first 12 years of my life playing at the Battle of Stirling Bridge with my 5 big brothers, and even though I'm a girl, they let me be William Wallace, who is supposed to be one of our ancestors, because I did the most rousing battle speeches. God, I tried hard last week. My God, I tried. But now I know I'm a coward. After the ridiculous deal I made with SS Hamsternführer von Linden, I know I am a coward, and I'm going to give you anything you ask, everything I can remember, absolutely every last detail. Here's the deal we made. I'm putting it down to keep it straight in my own mind. Let's try this, the Hamsternführer said to me. How could you be bribed? And I said, I wanted my clothes back. It seems petty now. I'm sure he was expecting my answer to be something defiant. Give me freedom or victory or something generous like stop toying with that wretched French resistance laddie and give him a dignified and merciful death. Or at least something more directly connected to my present circumstance like please let me go to sleep or feed me or get rid of this sodding iron rail you have kept tied against my spine for the past 3 days. But I was prepared to go sleepless and starving and upright for a good while yet, if only I didn't have to do it in my underwear. Rather foul and damp at times, and so embarrassing. The warmth and dignity of my flannel skirt and woolly sweater are worth far more to me now than patriotism or integrity. So von Linden sold my clothes back to me piece by piece, except my scarf and stockings, of course, which were taken away early on to prevent me strangling myself with them. I did try. The pullover cost me 4 sets of wireless code, the full lot of encoding poems, passwords, and frequencies. Von Linden let me have the pullover back on credit right away. It was waiting for me in my cell when they finally untied me at the end of that dreadful 3 days, though I was incapable of getting the damn thing on at first. But even just dragged over the top of me like a shawl, it was comforting. Now that I've managed to get into it at last, I don't think I shall ever take it off again. The skirt and blouse cost rather less than the pullover, and it was only 1 code set apiece for my shoes. There are 11 sets in all. The last one was supposed to buy my slip. Notice how he's worked it in that I get the clothes from the outside in, so I have to go through the torment of undressing in front of everybody every time another item is given back to me. He's the only one who doesn't watch. He threatened to take it all away from me again when I suggested he was missing a fabulous show. It was the first time the accumulated damage has really been on display, and I wish he would have looked at its masterpiece, and my arms particularly. Also, the first time I've been able to stand in a while, which I wanted to show off to him. Anyway, I've decided to do without my slip, which also saves me the trouble of stripping again to put it on. And in exchange for the last code set, I bought myself a supply of ink and paper and some time. Von Linden has said I have 2 weeks and that I can have as much paper as I need. All I have to do is cough up everything I can remember about the British war effort. And I'm going to. Von Linden resembles Captain Hook, in that he is rather an upright sort of gentleman in spite of his being a brute, and I'm quite Pan-like in my naive confidence that he will play by the rules and keep his word. So far, he has. To start off my confession, he gave me this lovely creamy embossed stationery from the Chateau de Bordeaux, the Bordeaux Castle Hotel, which is what this building used to be. I would not have believed a French hotel could be so forbiddingly bleak if I had not seen the barred shutters and padlocked doors with my own eyes. It is rather a lot to be resting on a single code set, but in addition to my treasonous account, I've also promised von Linden my soul, although I do not think he takes this very seriously. Anyway, it will be a relief to write anything that isn't connected with code. I'm so dreadfully sick of spewing wireless code. Only when we put all those lists to paper did I realize what a huge supply of code I do actually have in me. It's jolly astonishing, really. You stupid Nazi bastards. I'm just damned. I'm utterly and completely damned. You'll shoot me at the end no matter what I do because that's what you do to enemy agents. It's what we do to enemy agents. After I write this confession, if you don't shoot me and if I ever make it home, I'll be tried and shot as a collaborator anyway. But I look at all the dark and twisted roads ahead, and this is the easy one, the obvious one. What's in my future? A tin of kerosene poured down my throat and a match held to my lips? Scalpel and acid like the resistance boy who wouldn't talk? My living skeleton packed up in a cattle wagon with 200 desperate others, carted off God knows where to die of thirst before we get there? No, I'm not traveling those roads. This is the easiest. The others are too frightening even to look down. I am going to write in English. I don't have the vocabulary for a warfare account in French, and I can't write fluently enough in German. Someone will have to translate for Hauptsturmführer von Linden. Fraulein Engel can do it. She speaks English very well. She's the one who explained to me that paraffin and kerosene are the same thing. We call it paraffin at home, but the Americans call it kerosene, and that is more or less what the word sounds like in French and German, too. About the paraffin, kerosene, whatever it is, I do not really believe you have a liter of kerosene to waste on me. Or do you get it on the black market? How do you claim the expense? 1 liter highly explosive fuel for execution of British spy? Anyway, I will do my best to spare you the expense. One of the first items in the very long list I have been given to think about, including in my confession, is location of British airfield for invasion of Europe. Fraulein Engel will confirm that I burst out laughing when I read that. You really think that I know a damn thing about where the Allies are planning to launch their invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe? I'm on the Special Operations Executive because I can speak French and German and I'm good at making up stories. And I am a prisoner in the Orme Gestapo HQ because I have no sense of direction whatsoever. Bearing in mind that the people who trained me encouraged my blissful ignorance of airfields, just so I couldn't tell you such a thing if you did catch me, and not forgetting that I wasn't even told the name of the airfield we took off from when I came here. Let me remind you that I had been in France less than 48 hours before that obliging agent of yours had to stop me being run over by a French van full of French chickens because I looked the wrong way before crossing the street, which shows how cunning the Gestapo are. This person I've pulled from beneath the wheels of certain death was expecting to travel on the left side of the road. Therefore, she must be British and is likely to have parachuted into Nazi-occupied France out of the Allied plane. I shall now arrest her as a spy. So, I have no sense of direction. In some of us, it is a tragic flaw, and there is no point in me trying to direct you to locations of any airfields anywhere, not without someone giving me the coordinates. I could make them up, perhaps, and be convincing about it to buy myself more time, but you would catch on eventually. Aircraft types in operational use is also on the list of things I am to tell you. God, this is a funny list. If I knew or cared a damn thing about aircraft types, I would be flying planes for the Air Transport Auxiliary like Maddie, the pilot who dropped me here. or working as a fitter or a mechanic, not cravenly coughing up facts and figures for the Gestapo. I will not mention my cowardice again because it is beginning to make me feel indecent. Also, I do not want you to get bored and take this handsome paper away or go back to holding my face in a basin of ice water until I pass out. No, wait, I do know some aircraft types. I will tell you all the aircraft types I know, starting with the Puss Moth. This was the first aircraft my friend Maddie ever flew. In fact, it was the first aircraft she ever had a ride in, and even the first one she ever got close to. And the story of how I came to be here starts with Maddie. I don't think I'll ever know how I ended up carrying her national registration card and pilot's license instead of my own ID when you pick me up. But if I tell you about Maddie, you'll understand why we flew here together. Aircraft types. Maddie is properly Margaret Brodat. You have her ID, you know her name. Brodat is a Northern English name. It is a Russian name, I think, because her grandfather came from Russia. But Maddie is pure Stockport. Unlike me, she has an excellent sense of direction. She can navigate by the stars and by dead reckoning, but I think she learned to make use her sense of direction properly because her granddad gave her a motorbike for her 16th birthday. Then Maddie was away out of Stockport and up the unmade lanes into the high moors of the Pennine Hills. You see, you can see the Pennines all around the town of Stockport, green and bare with fast-moving stripes of cloud and sunlight gliding overhead like a Technicolor moving picture. I know because I went on leave for a weekend and stayed with Maddie and her grandparents, and she took me on her motorbike up the dark peak, one of the most wonderful afternoons of my life. It was winter and the sun came out only for about 5 minutes, and even then the sleet didn't stop falling. It was because the weather was forecast so unflyable that she had the 3 days off. But for 5 minutes, Cheshire seemed green and sparkling. Maddie's granddad owns a bike shop, and he got some black market petrol for her specially when I visited. I'm putting this down, even though that's nothing to do with aircraft types, because it proves that I know what I'm talking about when I describe what it's like for Maddie to be alone at the top of the world, deafened by the roar of four winds and two cylinders, with all the Cheshire plain and its green fields and red chimneys thrown at her feet like a tartan picnic blanket. Maddie had a friend called Beryl, who had left school, and in the summer of 1938, Beryl was working on the cotton mill in Lateral, and they liked to take Sunday picnics on Maddie's motorbike, because it was the only time they saw each other anymore. Beryl rode with her arms tight around Maddie's waist like I did that time. No goggles for Beryl or for me, though Maddie had her own. On this particular June Sunday, they rode up through the lanes between the dry stone walls that Beryl's laboring ancestors had built, and up over the top of Highdown Rise, with mud up their bare shins. Beryl's best skirt was ruined that day, and her dad made her pay for a new one out of her next week's wages. "I love your granddad," Beryl shouted in Maddie's ear. "I wish he was mine." I wish that too. "Fancy him giving you a silent superb for your birthday." "It's not so silent," Maddie shouted back over her shoulder. "It wasn't new when I got it, and it's 5 years old now. I've had to rebuild the engine this year." "Won't your granddad do it for you?" "He wouldn't even give it to me until I'd taken the engine apart. I have to do it myself, or I can't have it." "I still love him," Beryl shouted. They tore along the high green lanes of Highdown Rise, along tractor ruts that nearly bounced them over dry stone field walls and into a bed of mire and nettles and sheep. I remember, and I know what it must have been like. Every now and then, around a corner or at the crest of a hump on the hill, you can see the bare green chain of the Pennines stretching serenely to the east, or the factory chimneys of South Manchester scrawling the blue north sky with black smoke. "And you'll have a skill," Beryl yelled. "A what?" "A skill!" "Fixing engines," Maddie howled. "It's a skill. Better than loading shuttles." "You're getting paid for loading shuttles," Maddie yelled back. "I don't get paid." The lane ahead was rutted with rain-filled potholes. It looked like a miniature landscape of the Highland Lochs. Maddie slowed the bike to a putter and finally had to stop. She put her feet down on solid earth, her skirt rucked up to her thighs, still feeling the Superb's reliable and familiar rumble all through her body. "Who'll give a girl a job fixing engines?" Maddie said. "Gran wants me to learn to type. At least you're earning." They had to get off the bike and walk it along the ditch-filled lane. Then there was another rise, and they came to a farm gate set between field boundaries, and Maddie leaned the motorbike against the stone wall so they could eat their sandwiches. They looked at each other and laughed at the mud. "What'll your dad say?" Maddie exclaimed. "What'll your gran?" "She's used to it." Beryl's word for picnic was baggin', Maddie said. Doorstep slices of granary loaf Beryl's auntie baked for 3 families every Wednesday, and pickled onions as big as apples. Maddie's sandwiches were on rye bread from the baker's in Reddick, where her grandmother sent her every Friday. The pickled onions stopped Maddie and Beryl having a conversation, because chewing made so much crunching in their heads they couldn't hear each other talk, and they had to be careful swallowing so they wouldn't be asphyxiated by an accidental blast of vinegar. Perhaps Chief Storm Captain von Linden might find pickled onions useful as a persuasive tool, and your prisoners would get fed at the same time. Fraulein Engel instructs me to put down here for Captain von Linden to know, when he reads it, that I have wasted 20 minutes of the time given me, because here in my story I laughed at my own stupid joke about the pickled onions and broke the pencil point. We had to wait for someone to bring a knife to sharpen it, because Miss Engel is not allowed to leave me by myself. And then I wasted another 5 minutes weeping after I snapped off the new point, because Miss E had sharpened it very close to my face, flicking the shavings onto my eyes, while SS Scharführer Thibault held my head still, and it made me terribly nervous. I'm not laughing or crying now, and will try not to press so hard after this. At any rate, think of Maddie before the war, free and at home with her mouth full of pickled onion. She could only point and choke when a spluttering, smoking aircraft hove into view above their heads and circled the field they were overlooking as they perched on the gate. That aircraft was a puss moth. I can tell you a bit about the puss moths. They're fast, light monoplanes, only one set of wings. The tiger moth is a biplane and has 2 sets, another type I've just remembered. You can fold the puss moth's wings back for trucking the machine around or storing. It has a super view from the cockpit and can seat 2 passengers as well as the pilot. I've been a passenger in one a couple of times. I think the upgraded version is called a leopard moth. That's 3 aircraft I've named in one paragraph. This puss moth circling the field at high down rise, the first puss moth Maddie ever came across, was choking to death. Maddie said it was like having a ringside seat at the circus. With the plane at 300 feet, she and Beryl could see every detail of the machine in miniature, every wire, every strut of its pair of canvas wings, the flicker of the wooden propeller blades as they spun ineffectively in the wind. Great blue clouds of smoke billowed from the exhaust. "He's on fire!" screamed Beryl in a fit of delighted panic. "He's not on fire, he's burning oil," Maddie said, because she knows these things. "If he has any sense, he'll shut everything off and it'll stop. Then he can glide down." They watched. Maddie's prediction came true. The engine stopped and the smoke drifted away, and now the pilot was clearly planning to put his damaged rig down in the field right in front of them. It was a grazing field, unplowed, unmown, without any livestock in it. The wings above their heads cut out the sun for a second with the sweep and billow of a sailing yacht. The aircraft's final pass pulled all the litter of their lunch out onto the field, brown crusts and brown paper fluttering in the blue smoke like the devil's confetti. Maddie said it would have been a good landing if it had been on an aerodrome. In the field, the wounded flying machine bounced haplessly over the unmown grass for 30 yards. Then it tipped up gracefully on its nose. Maddie broke into applause. Beryl grabbed her hands and smacked one of them. "You gormless cow, he might be hurt. Oh, what shall we do?" Maddie hadn't meant to clap. She'd done it without thinking. I can picture her blowing the curling black hair out of her eyes, with her lower lip jutting out before she jumped down from the gate and hopped over the green tussocks to the downed plane. There were no flames. Maddie scaled her way up the puss moth's nose to get at the cockpit and put one of her hobnailed shoes through the fabric that covered the fuselage. I think that's what the body of the plane is called. And I'll bet she cringed. She hadn't meant to do that either. She was feeling very hot and bothered by the time she unlatched the door, expecting a lecture from the aircraft's owner, and was shamefully relieved to find the pilot hanging upside down in half-undone harness straps and clearly stone-cold unconscious. Maddie glanced over the alien engine controls. No oil pressure, she told me all this. Throttle out, off. Good enough. Maddie untangled the harness and let the pilot slither to the ground.
Beryl was there to catch the dragging weight of the pilot's senseless body. It was easier for Maddie to get down off the plane than it had been for her to get up, just a light hop to the ground. She unbuckled the pilot's helmet and goggles. She and Beryl had both done first aid and Girl Guides, for all that's worth, and knew enough to make sure the casualty could breathe. Beryl began to giggle. "Who's the gormless cow?" Maddie exclaimed. "It's a girl," Beryl laughed. "It's a girl."
Sorry, it's super windy out here today. So if you want to hear more about British aircraft during World War II, or you want to learn about British airfields, what it's like to be shot down behind enemy lines and captured, or if you would like to know about more about the role of women pilots during World War II, and just also like they said in the foreword, this is a novel of friendship. So it's just an awesome, awesome story. It's definitely one of my favorite historical fiction that I recommend to people a lot. So come and check it out at our library.